Andy, wonderful to have you on. I couldn't help but think of you yesterday as I was watching Urban Meyer. I remember you covered his first couple of NFL games and most, if not all, of his career at Florida and elsewhere. Is he going to make it?
I don't know, Paul. It doesn't seem like he has a lot of answers, and it seems like the folks inside the building are not big fans right now. And it's interesting because when you're asked how to fix the problem and you just scored 0 points and your solution to fixing the problem is find the leaks, I don't think that's really the problem. The problem is probably scoring 0 points. So if there's not some sort of schematic solution that he can find, I don't know what you do, because you hired these people. You may not like the results you're getting, but you hired them. And at this point, I'm not sure how many really good qualified people are going to want to come work next year if this is what's going on this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing if you're the the head of the Communist Party in Russia, and you're asked to fix the problem, and you go out there and round up the leakers. But that only played right into the narrative, did it not? The way he answered that.
It did, and yeah, you can't send Marvin Jones Jr. to Siberia. You probably need to find a way to get him some balls that he can catch and score some touchdowns. I mean, they're playing the Texans this week, though, Paul. We're saying all this. They may win that game. They are actually they were favored when the line opened up. So, everything may get magically fixed by playing the Texans. Who knows? Although I was at the first Texans game, and that did not go well for the Jaguars.
Let's get to the world we know best, and that's college football. And I don't even know where to begin, Andy, because so many things have happened since we last spoke to you. But in terms of the carousel, we've seen Lincoln to L.A. and Brian Kelly to the world of Southern draws, and now Mario Cristobal and Lanning. I mean, just sort it all out for us.
Well, it is amazing. This felt like there were more premium elite guys moving from one place to another than before. But what's interesting is the domino effect was not as bad as it could have been. Because think about these big jobs that got filled with assistants. You had Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and Oregon all got filled with assistant coaches, coordinators, either coordinators from other schools or Marcus Freeman was already at Notre Dame. And that kind of dulled the domino effect, because this could still be going on if those guys had hired sitting head coaches. Now, I will say, hiring a coordinator, not a bad idea. Oklahoma, the last two guys they hired, both coordinators, Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley, worked out pretty well. Dan Lanning is leaving Georgia to go to Oregon. Georgia, run by a guy who was a coordinator when he got hurt, working out pretty well. So, you think, it needs to be the Lincoln Riley hire or the Cristobal hire, the Kelly hire for this to work. But these coordinator hires may wind up being just as good or better.
Talking to Andy Stables. Andy, we had the opportunity to visit for the first time Friday with Billy Napier. I know you've covered that story and have watched Billy Napier over the years. Your thoughts on how he will manage in a place that very few have been successful?
It is a tough job. That is a job, Florida, that chews people up and spits them out. Now, I wrote something during the coaching search, I believe right after they fired Dan Mullen, where basically I was saying you need to look at Kirby Smart, find somebody who can compete with Kirby Smart, because that's who you're dealing with in your division. That's who stands really between you and what you want. And I think what they did is find a guy who, very similar, kind of, a Nick Saban disciple, seems like he took the right things from Nick Saban. We'll see. I mean, you don't know, but based on his career as a head coach so far, it seems like he took the adaptability and the process-oriented thinking and the stuff that really works well for Nick Saban. But we've seen before where guys who worked for Nick Saban have gotten jobs like this, and it hasn't worked out. Will Muschamp never could quite figure out the offensive philosophy at Florida. Jeremy Pruitt went to Tennessee and tried to recreate 2012 Alabama with players that weren't as good as Alabama. So it really, we're going to have to see what he does, but based on what he's done at Louisiana so far, it does seem like he took the right traits from his time with Nick Saban.
Talking to Andy Staples. Andy, speaking of Dan Lanning going to Oregon, let's talk about the Dogs for a second. I mean, we're still 2 weeks away and change from seeing them again, but their fan base seems to be all over the place, and understandably so. What's your takeaway from a weekend 2 days ago in Atlanta, and where do we go from here?
It's that, oh no, here we go again feeling. But I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world for them, because they have such good players. They have so much talent on that team. You go back to 2017, Paul. Remember how they got destroyed by Auburn in that first meeting, and then they shuffled some things around, and the offensive line came back, crushed Auburn in the SEC championship game. Obviously, Kerryon Johnson was injured. That didn't help Auburn, but it was a different game entirely. We've seen Alabama play quite a few different games this season. So, and obviously Georgia has to get past Michigan first, but that feels a little like the two Spider-Men pointing at each other to me. They seem very similar, and I think Georgia can do what they do a little bit better than Michigan does what they do, even though they're kind of doing a little bit of the same thing. But let's say Georgia plays Alabama again. We haven't seen that game from Alabama every game, and that's probably the worst game we've seen from Georgia. So my guess is if they play again, it's going to be a little bit closer. And I don't know who wins it, but I don't think Georgia fans should be completely in the tank, like, oh no, it's over, here we go again, Nick Saban's going to own us forever. I don't think that's the right way to feel about it right now. I think give you guys a little bit of a chance. Let's see what they do against Michigan. But if there's a rematch, my guess is it will go a little better for Georgia.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming, sports, and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.